When you're first starting out, you don't want to spend a whole ton of money, and you want to make books, and it allows you to do that with very simple things. If you get into it further and further and further, it's going to behoove you to get some equipment.
I'm stepping out of my studio and into the real world to connect with the artists and bookbinders who inspire me. Come along on the bookish field trips I've always dreamt of as we learn all about bookbinding. Nestled in the Colorado Rockies is the tiny town of Telluride. It's known for its mountains and trails, but for some of us, it's a destination to learn from the best bookbinding teachers in the country. I just finished a class at the American Academy of Bookbinding, and I'm excited to bring you along on a tour of the bindery. Chip, the director of the school, will share all about the tools and equipment they have and his thoughts on how to start a bindery at home. Plus, we'll dive into the courses they offer. We're here in the classroom and bindery where I've made some of my favorite books. I know that there is some history here that's really interesting, so I'm wondering, Chip, if you could tell me a bit more.
We know of this building in town as the Old Stone Building, and it was built in 1909 as a stable, livery stable, and there was a door there and a door there, and the carriages would come through, and they'd unhook the horses, and there were horse stalls in here. Telluride was a mining town for 100 years before that industry faded away out here. In 2000, the AHA school bought the building for AAB's classroom space. One of the interesting things is a lot of this woodwork that you see around here was the old roof boards. I guess in some ways it's always been a maker space. I mean, aside from shoeing horses.
I know the viewers are very curious about the equipment that exists in a traditional bindery, and I really do recommend trying all this equipment at least once so you know what you're trying to achieve. I know that you have a lot of experience and you can tell us how to adapt and find more affordable equipment that we can use at home.
Well, let's start over here with some more traditional tools.
Okay.
This is a traditional backing press, and it is used, it's called a backing press, but it's used for rounding and backing. When you squeeze the jaws shut, you can work with a hammer to round, to create a round on the spine. And, in some cases you really need that pressure and to be able to get the shoulder. Some papers are harder, heavier. If it's a really thick book, you really need something like this. But most people binding books do not need this, and I'll show you ways around that.
You can see all the hammer marks.
Yeah. I want to talk about this. This is board shears. It's basically a giant paper cutter, but it's got the heft of it, and you can see there's a counterweight. This gauge moves, and it's for cutting binder's board that's used in the covers of books. And these are rather rare to come by. It's nice to have such a big cutter for when you're buying full parent sheets and you want to cut down paper or board. But for the most part, unless it's a really thick board, you don't need something this heavy duty. Board shears, if you can find one, they're going to be $2,000 or more. So oftentimes, I just steer people to a cut trimmer. I think these are super handy and really strong. This is the Ideal 1071, and it's quite large. They make one even larger than this, and they make the 1058, which is smaller than this. The one thing is the blade and the arm is the same on all of them. So you're not going to get the inertia that you're going to get on a board shears for cutting a big board. I had a smaller version of this that I use for cutting photopolymer plates. And I cut thousands of plates on this, and I never had to sharpen it.
Oh, nice.
So
okay.
They're pretty strong and versatile.
Okay, yeah, cutting board is one of the more strenuous things that you have to do, so having equipment for it is nice.
Yeah, and you really need things to be square.
Yes.
And to be able to square things up. You always want to, when you're cutting down with a utility knife, you want to overcut by 1/8 of an inch. So then when you put it on something like this, you're doing your final trim.
Right.
And if you have a lot of extra material hanging out and you're trying to do your final trim, it wants to pull. So if you have just a little bit hanging over, a little bit of extra, and you're just trimming that off, you're going to be much better off and get square cuts.
Oh, okay. Good tip. I came here last year for the first time for Intro 2 and full leather binding. Yeah, my bookbinding practice has been transformed by coming here, and I know you're working really hard behind the scenes, making sure students feel like welcome. So I really appreciate your work in like running the school and the space as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, community is a big part of what we do because binders are spread out all over the country, and if we can be a resource for everybody, that's it's always good.
When I came here for the first time, I was like, oh my God, Telluride is so remote, so far away, it's hard to get here. But once I'm here, all I can really focus on is bookbinding, which I love. And this place is just so beautiful. So why Telluride?
Well, AAB was originally at first called the AHA School for Book and Story Arts, and it was founded by Daniel Tucker. And Daniel had spent summers here as a child, and he came back to Telluride, and he was friends with Teeny Miura, who was a fine binder. People started coming to study binding with Teeny, and they started coming, from all over the world. And after 3 years, AHA decided that they needed local programming, and so then they formed the American Academy of Bookbinding. I took classes at the Minnesota Center for Book Arts and volunteered photographing books, and kind of discovered the history of the book because they had exhibits that were anywhere from artist books of Ed Ruscha and contemporary artists to traditional fine press. When you first discover book arts and making things, it's really exciting. I mean, most people get super excited about it. And I just always remember that feeling. I came to AAB, I finally had the time and the money in the summer of 2019 and took my first class. I felt that same exciting feeling I felt when I first started taking classes 30 years before. And I thought to myself, wow, there's something really special about this place. I mean, aside from Telluride and how beautiful Telluride is, the interaction of students and instructors is just super encouraging to learn and exciting. You're on vacation in a way that's different because you're also working, and oftentimes working your butt off in these classes because they're really intense. It's easy to get frustrated when you're binding and trying to remember all the different steps, especially when you get into full leather bindings. And it takes just a moment just to look out the window and realize that you're in a special place, and it instantly is a break. And then you can get back to it. This is a horizontal plough. And if you want to do any gold or edge treatment, you need a really smooth cut edge. So this was cut on all 3 sides, so it could be gilded in gold all the way around. In commercial shops, there are guillotine cutters that will come down, but even those aren't as precise as a plough. And this is a very traditional tool, but it's very specific to cutting a nice clean edge. In a sense, this is the old version of a guillotine cutter. It's very versatile in some ways. This comes off and has these grooves, and you'll notice on here there's a very sharp blade. So the top of your book is slightly sticking out of the top of this press, and it's clamped in there quite tight, and you'll advance the blade and you just go back and forth and cut 1 page at a time, basically. And it gives you an extremely smooth cut. And then with a little bit of light sanding and preparation, you can lay down gold, and that's when the gilding of edges, and all of these edges have been gilt. This technology has been around for 500-600 years. A guillotine cutter came in for commercial purposes. Printers really need them to be able to cut down large stacks of paper. It's called a horizontal plow because the book is in here and you're plowing it horizontally. So a more affordable version that you can get at Talus is this one, which is known as a vertical plow. And your book essentially goes in, it wouldn't be bound. You're just talking about the text block. This blade is vertical, so you get it clamped in here good, and then you go back and forth, slowly lowering the blade as you go. A ragged edge, I think it's a really beautiful thing, but commercially it's not really done because all that ragged edge in the decal of the paper, as beautiful it is, it's just a dust collector, So, and that's one of the reasons where gilt edges come in. It keeps dust out of a book. It really seals it in a way. So this is a book, the title, The Fountain in Moonlight, Images by Samiko. Was designed by Daniel Tucker, who's the founder of the school. And it's a design binding by the first director of the fine binding program, Tini Miura. It's a one of a kind. The inlays and onlays, tooling, different materials, exotic alligator that's been dyed, alabaster. That's one of the things you'll learn in Colleen's classes, leather dyeing and manipulation.
Wow, gorgeous.
I skipped ahead a little bit.
It's okay. So the pages are tipped together.
On the forehead, yeah. So these were originally really large woodcuts that they made smaller plates up to print the book. There is a kind of a climax that does happen here. So.
Wow.
And there's one in color.
Cool.
And then the colophon. One of the things you'll see here, you see the little bumps. Those are the cords that the book is bound around. So that's normal in a fine binding, but that's not considered a flaw.
It's like an indication that it's hand bound.
Yeah. It's really easy, and I know, to get isolated in your studio and just work away. And years go by. I wish I would have come to AB in the early 2000s to take classes. And it is something I'm kind of pushing, is like AAB is the pre-graduate program and also a postgraduate program. Students from North Bennett Street or Alabama, they're out there working in their careers. University of Iowa has a great program too, that they can come back and reignite their bench skills to refine something that maybe they've lost. Students that are trying to get into graduate programs for conservation, there's very few of them and they're very competitive. And you have to go in with a portfolio of work, and we have students that come here to do that, to learn the basics of conservation, develop their hand skills, and to get into some of these competitive programs. The American Academy of Bookbinding has 2 diploma programs. One's the fine binding program, where you're essentially making a one-of-a-kind fine binding for exhibition. And every 3 years we run the Open Set International Fine Binding Competition. And there are certain things you do to a binding, for competition that you would never do in a commercial practice. Or you could, I wouldn't say never. And the other program is comprehensive binding program, which encompasses book conservation, book and paper conservation, but also edition binding and hopefully teaching students how to run their own bindery. Students don't need to be in a diploma program to take classes here. But certainly there are a growing number of people that really are interested in getting a diploma. And people will come to me before they'd even taken a class and say, I'm interested in the diploma program. And that's great. But I tell people to tell me that after they've taken 4 core classes. And those 4 core classes are the Intro to Bookbinding, from pamphlet stitch to case binding, how to properly work with tools. So the Intro 2 class introduces students to working with leather. And you're also doing a modified case binding, which is a really beautiful binding, and you're learning how to round and back a spine and that kind of thing. And then you move into the fundamentals classes. And this one is a core class in the comprehensive bookbinding program, and it's taught by Peter Garrity, who runs that program. And you bind a book, either on raised cords, or you can flatten them so they can be flat or raised. And the structure of the books are the same, but you learn about binding from a conservation perspective. And all the information you learn from Peter's covers, how you do this for more commercial production. And then there's the other core class. The fourth one is Don Gleister's Fundamentals of Full Leather Binding. And you learn how to bind a book completely in leather. This has now decorations and has become a design binding. But basically in the full leather class, you're just doing the full leather. And a full leather binding is the canvas that design bindings stem from. You cut into the leather for inlays and onlays, tooling, blind tooling, edge decoration. In both of them, you learn hand-sewn edge bands. Taking the 4 core classes, a student will really know how to bind a book. We require you to make 10 books in class. That's easy enough to do. But you have to do 10 books at home. As people move through the diploma program, we're helping them as best we can to build a studio, to acquire equipment and what they need. And it's really that homework stuff, that homework book projects that make students really great binders.
I've seen a few books made by graduates here, and yeah, it would be a dream to get to that level.
I don't care how long it takes someone to go through the program. I just want them, when they get out of this program, to be able to bind as good as anybody, and create beautiful design bindings or run their own shop. I want to just talk about some real simple basic tools. These are cradles for punching signatures. This is a really nice one. It's from Affordable Binding Equipment in California. And they make a number of tools that are really pretty reasonable. But you can make your own. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing. And this is just something made out of binder's board. And it's basically the 2 ends of a cradle and board. I mean, this was all glued together at one point. There are ways to make these things so they are pullable, but you just glue it in and you've got your punching cradle.
If you have a lot of signatures, this is nice to use.
If you're doing an addition to. I mean, in Colleen Curry's class, she does, we make a little jig. I'm gonna just do a simple one right now, showing a really simple punching jig. And then, this is one of the most brilliant things I learned in graduate school, is how to measure without a ruler. And so I want to do kettles on the end and then similar holes in the middle. So if you take a piece of paper that's the height of your signature, I want to find the middle. That's pretty easy. With this strip, I fold it in half. That's going to be the middle. I want my kettles, and I want them to roughly be the same, so I'll just make these little tabs here. That's going to be my kettle.
And it doesn't matter what the measurement is.
Right. This is the measurement. It's just not numbers. It's just a physical thing. And then you unfold it, and it's got all your stations. So I'm going to just punch the holes where these folds are. If you have a folded sheet and you have that one cut on one side, it creates a little hook. And you put this in the middle, fold down your hook, and there it is. It's hooking to the top of your page, right?
Nice.
And then, generally you work on the edge of a table. So you can get you punch through, and you got your signatures ready to sew.
That's new to me. That's cool.
Once you have your signatures punched, you're going to sew them. And traditionally we use sewing frames. So this is from Affordable Bookbinding, and it's pretty straightforward: wing nuts and screws, and you sew like this, and you generally on the edge. So you got your signatures. You use a little weights. Let's talk about that for a second. We have fancy weights, but these are just little zip bags full of lead shot. That'll hold your book and your pages in place. And then you use these things to run to attach the cords to, and there's keys and whatnot. And it's a fancy thing. And you do not need a sewing frame to sew a lot of books. I mean, if you're sewing big books and thick books, or if you're doing additions, a sewing frame is really handy and makes everything faster. But, realistically, most of the books I sew are just at the edge of the table. And, the cords are flopping around a little bit. So generally, this is what it's going to look like when you're sewing on cords. But once you have it in this position, then you're going to want to line the spine, and that's generally where we're using a line press. And these are Affordable makes one with the steel screws. It's pretty reasonably priced. The traditional wood ones are awfully quite nice. But you generally put it in here, close it up. And these line presses, you can get at Talus for about 300 bucks. So it's not exactly that affordable, but they're super handy to use. And then you'll glue up the spine and you'll put your spine linings on there and everything. And so this is really, and then you can pick it up and go get it out of the way if you're working on something else, which is great. But when I first started out of graduate school, I just used, I took bricks actually, and I covered them in binders and bookbinding cloth. Here we have these fancy metal ones, but it's basically the same thing. And you can kind of create, I mean, with a brick that's nice and long, but you create that with just this, and you can line a spine this way.
And you can put boards in between to squeeze it a little better. Yeah.
Yeah, because you definitely want the boards in there.
Yeah.
So I'm being pretty down and dirty here. So when you're first starting out, you don't want to spend a whole ton of money, and you want to make books, and it allows you to do that with very simple things. If you get into it further and further and further, it's going to behoove you to get some equipment. These aren't particularly that expensive, and you can find them probably on eBay for maybe under 100 bucks if they're a little beat up, but they still do the job. Alternately, to sewing on the edge of a table, if you do need a sewing frame to hold the cords out of the way, I just learned this from Ann Hillam. You can get these speed clamps, and you can see that these have like a little hole in them, and space them as far apart as you're working on. And you can string she said bamboo through there, or a steel rod that you can get at the hardware store. Basically is what you're creating here. A way to hold the cords out of the way as you sew your book. And I think that's
smart.
pretty slick.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are so multi-purpose. Like you could use them to press. Like you could do this if you needed more pressure.
And at a certain point, you're going to need to press a book. I mean, the thing is, it's like when we do fine leather bindings, we press signatures overnight, and we do them in the acrylic boards, and we press them really hard and really tight. You remember that. That we use a compression press. And compression presses, I'd never seen one until I came here. They're hard to find, and they really do crank down hard. An alternative to that, I mean, this is an alternative press that I think of this as an affordable bookbinding press. You can see it's got the brass edge boards, which I'm going to talk. It's got it's interesting. It's got angles on one side, so you can do kind of some rounding with it.
Yeah. Stand it vertically.
And it's flat on the other side, which is just basically for pressing in the French joint on the joints on a book. If you really need to compress something hard, you could do something like this without the fly nuts, where you just have boards, and but you would need to get it into something with a solid yoke, and then there's a hydraulic press that you use for jacking up cars, and you can crank down on that really hard if you have something to resist.
Yeah, but for most books, you don't need that much pressure.
No, most books, I mean, this is a lot of weight. I mean, this has got I don't know, what do you think that weighs? 15 pounds, 10 pounds?
At least 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, for most stuff that we press overnight, a lot of that's just 10 to 20 pounds. You can do that with weights. And then these are just press boards. If you have access to woodworking equipment, you can, anybody can make these pretty easily, but you can buy them. And these ones with the wood, we use for the top edge gilding. But you can also buy them with metal edges on them, and you can kind of do some rounding and backing with that. It's got a little hook on here, so it will sit in these. Well, these are going to be too long for this press, but it'll sit down there and hook on there.
You all remember the job backer earlier. These boards would be the at-home alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this book I did in 2003, I think. It was a call for work for the Guild of Bookworkers. The theme that we had to work with was time. And I was reading about, I guess they were working on the movie, the Oppenheimer movie. So there was a lot about the nuclear bomb. And so I wanted to do this book. It's called Half-Life, Full Life. A lot of times, and this is an example, I want to learn a structure, and you really learn a structure if you have to make an addition of it. So it's called Half-Life, Full Life. It's kind of the timeline of the Doomsday Clock, and I always thought it was, something out of science fiction movies. And it turns out it's a real thing. It's at the University of Chicago, and there's a team of nuclear scientists that determine, like, if the clock reaches midnight, the world blows up. And so T-7 minutes is the initial setting of the Doomsday Clock. So 7 minutes to midnight, which, means that we were already pretty far along. It was a Cold War and all that stuff. And so 1947, T-7. And then I have this little box down here. So there's two boxes, and you'll see one is the change in the clock, when it happened. And then this is like what was popular at the time. Zippity Doo Dah is the #1 pop music song hit. So it's kind of like the whole cultural denial thing. It's like, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to listen to popular music. And so it reads like, a normal codex book in a sense, but you'll notice that there's this flap in there. Because it's about the Doomsday Clock and it's like a deck of cards, I wanted it to be like a deck of cards so that, like, if you mishandle it, it can fall apart. And the strip that runs through this, again, this is Tyvek. And so it's really strong.
For me, I think what makes a huge difference is having someone, the assistant or the teacher, hover over me and like watch me do something. And that live coaching really helps me remember. And this is the place to make as many mistakes as possible so that you're learning. And then it gets baked into your muscle memory so that when you go home, you're more likely to know what to do. The teachers here are so giving, like they will share everything they know. Yeah.
Put it all on the table.
Yeah.
I mean, there certainly are students that come here that already think they know what they know. You have to kind of break them out of that box to, not hide their mistakes. Mistakes are an opportunity to learn, and learning how to fix a mistake is a really important skill. Learn from as many different instructors as you can. Don't take one instructor's processes as dogma, and that's how it's done, because things are done in different ways to get to the same place. And having that breadth of understanding that different voices bring to it is really important, and it's something I learned early on.
Something that I appreciate about these very experienced binders and teachers is that they are still making mistakes in their like beautiful fine leather books. You just can't see them. They're just good at hiding them. And so that gives me confidence to make my own books and realize that like not everyone's gonna see that like poor pairing job or whatever.
Would you like to see some of the various drawers and what we do stock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll start with these drawers here. This is our sewing drawer. You can see in the front all the various silks that we have for sewing headbands, threads for sewing books. We do have some faux headband material, but once you take Intro 2, from there on out, you're hand sewing endbands. And then this is our just general tool drawer. Micrometers for measuring the thickness of paper and leather. We sell these Swiss knives from Mombelli, but we have some in here for students to test out.
Are these gauges?
Yeah, these are, we use them for like spine gauges
Oh, yeah.
from the spine to the cover boards. Finishing tools, these are for very specific things, but agate burnishers for when you're gilding the top edge of a book or on leather. Acetates and mylars, moisture barriers and then spun polyesters, so Holotex, Remay. The purpose of this is when you're pressing covers and papers, you don't want them to stick to what you're pressing onto, but you want them to dry. So moisture will travel through this, but it won't allow PVA to stick to it. And so we use that in combination with acetates and mylars. We offer classes in gold tooling and gold titling, and we're using traditional gold leaf, not foils. Foils are used mostly in the commercial work, and we do have foils that we use in the quick print presses. And a lot of people come here to learn traditional gold tooling. You know, these are brass type and single line pallet type holders that you heat up, and then there's a whole process to laying down templates and blind embossing and building up until you actually put down that gold. But there's type holders, various single line pallets. Let me move down the line actually to here. So
Wow.
traditional rolls. I mean, this is a single line roll. So along the edge of a book, we'll use those various sizes. And then there's more decorative rolls, like I'll show you something like that. I don't know if you can see the pattern on there. You can see what they do. This was just a test to show these different patterns. So I think I mentioned earlier compression press. When you tighten something down, you can only go so far, and then if you need to really tighten it down, it'll hold its tightness as you back it off, and then you can slam it and really get something tight. These are our glue brushes. We have some marked paste only and some marked, and if they're not marked, then they can be used for PVA. And then this cabinet has mostly glass jars because most of the classes are using paste. But one thing I stress with students is no PVA in glass containers. Because when I first got here, it took forever to clean those out. And in this case, we use these plastic containers with a lid. And when PVA dries in this, you just peel it off, and it's rather an enjoyable experience. So,
Yeah.
and it dries really evenly. So we use, plastic for PVA, glass for paste.
Nice.
This again is another compression press, like you saw. These are small nipping presses. Originally, their intention were copy presses for making duplicates. They weren't necessarily made for bookbinding, but they're perfect for bookbinding. And so we have them bolted down to the table, so when you crank them down, they won't move.
Oh, nice.
And you can find these pretty regularly at auction, but they'll range anywhere from $200 to $800 or more. But occasionally you can find them
Yeah.
less expensive.
Yeah. They might need some refurbishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they'll be really rusty, and that's not hard to clean or change.
Yeah.
And they're super handy for binding, pressing books.
Yeah, yeah. Why would something like this that's cast iron be preferred over like a wood one or a DIY
because these
one?
you can really crank down hard.
Yeah.
The wood ones are always going to give a little bit, but as long as you get the pressure tight, it shouldn't matter. Wood will warp.
Wood will warp. Yeah.
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 So that's not ideal, and you got to check your boards, your press boards.
Yeah.
So we got piles of these clear acrylic ones, and they don't warp, and they're translucent. They're brilliant.
Yeah. I got some right away after learning about them here.
We have litho stones. We use them for paring leather. And the reason is when your knife comes off the leather and hits the surface, it's dense enough that it won't damage the knife. But you can get away with scraps of corian, really smooth, solid surface material. We use regular tins for when you're pressing, and this is this aluminum flashing for gutters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we buy it in a roll and cut down what we need. And
Yeah.
it's also a moisture barrier, but it also presses things super flat.
Yeah. And I like it because it's so thin.
Yeah.
So as a moisture barrier, it's thin and it holds the shape of the board.
Holds the shape of the
Yeah.
board, and it doesn't push the joint up because it's so thin,
Yeah.
which is super important.
Yeah.
And then these are foam. You know, we use these for pressing too, especially like when you do inlays and onlays and things are at different levels and you still have to press your book. The foam will compensate for that.
Okay.
There's really not too much else
Yeah.
around here that isn't
Yeah.
normal. I mean,
I mean, when people come here, they can look through all the drawers.
yeah, and I encourage that. When I
see.
came here for the first time,
Yeah.
I was just fascinated and wanted to see what tools they were using here
Yeah.
and how they were organized. When I got here, the average age of our student body was like 63 or 64. And since the pandemic, the age has gone down to like mid 40s. So that's a pretty big drop. I'm pretty happy about that. Book arts has exploded so much that it's all kind of scattered a little bit. And I think the pandemic in some ways helped kind of focus people into what some of these different niches are. And it's driven people that want to learn the traditions of fine binding, but they want to learn, you know, how is a book really made? I mean, these beautiful books you see, how are they made? And that's what we're here to teach.
Thank you so much to Chip, the American Academy of Bookbinding, and the AHA School for the Arts for making this episode possible. Do you think you'll pursue bookbinding classes to advance your skills? The diploma programs definitely sound exciting to me. I just have to decide which path to take, fine binding or comprehensive. I hope you learned something new from episode 4 of All About Bookbinding. I'm so grateful to all my patrons and donors for supporting the series. With every episode, we're getting a deeper understanding of the people and places behind the craft we all love. If you'd like to chip in to support All About Bookbinding, check out our GoFundMe page. Stay tuned for more bookbinding videos to come. Thanks for being here and happy bookbinding.